In 1862, Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull built the house that would come to be known as the Borley Rectory, near the church where he worked in the village of Borley, England. It was built on the site of an older rectory, which had burned down 20 years prior. Over time, the house was expanded to accommodate his 14 children. The stories began almost as soon as the building was completed. Guests reported hearing footsteps upstairs while in the company of Bull and his family. The family themselves, particularly Bull's daughters, claimed to hear disembodied whispers, ringing bells, and even the sounds of a phantom coach arriving outside. Neighbors even claimed to have seen the coach arrive, driven by 2 headless horsemen. Legend had it that in the 1300s, a monastery had stood on the site where a monk had intended to elope with a nun. As punishment for this crime, the monk was sentenced to hang, and the nun was sealed within the walls of her convent while still alive. Reverend Bull and his son Harry reportedly enjoyed the stories his daughters would tell, and would spend their evenings watching for the ghost of the nun, who was said to wander the garden. Reverend Bull died in 1892, with Harry taking over the position. In 1900, 4 of Bull's daughters claimed to have actually seen the ghostly nun in the garden. They attempted to communicate with it, only for it to disappear as they got closer. Following his own death in 1927, Harry was succeeded by Reverend Guy Smith. While cleaning out a cupboard, Smith's wives discovered a paper bag that contained the skull of a young woman. Shortly afterward, they began hearing the footsteps that had become so routine for the previous owners, as well as the ringing of servant bells which had since been disconnected. Smith's wife even reported witnessing the late-night arrival of the infamous phantom coach. After only a year, they made the decision to leave. Smith was replaced by Reverend Lionel Foister and his wife, Mary Ann. It was under their ownership that the Borley Rectory would earn its name as the most haunted house in England. Shortly before the Smiths' departure, word had reached the local newspaper of the Blue Nun, the apparition which was said to haunt the garden. The paper asked ghost hunter Harry Price to investigate. Before long, Price had recorded several experiences with the footsteps and ringing bells that had been reported for decades. Under the ownership of the Foisters, the hauntings seemed to take on a new, malevolent turn. Doors would mysteriously lock themselves, once trapping their daughter Adelaide in a room with the key nowhere to be found. Furniture would move when no one was present, and windows would shatter, seemingly without cause. Price noted that much of the activity seemed to center around Mary Ann. She reported being slapped by unseen hands, having heavy objects thrown at her, and even once being thrown from her bed. Messages began appearing on the walls of the house, seemingly calling on Mary Ann for help. The Foisters conducted 2 exorcisms, both of which ended in failure. During the first of these, Lionel claimed to have been struck by a baseball-sized stone. With his health deteriorating, the Foisters, too, decided to leave the property in 1935. Wishing to continue his investigation, Price leased the property for himself. During a seance in October of 1937, he claimed to have made contact with a spirit named Marie Lair, a French nun who had left her convent to marry Henry Waldegrave, whose family's manor had once stood on the property. Henry had strangled her to death, then buried her in the cellar. Months later, Price claimed to have made contact with a second spirit, who pledged that the Borley Rectory would burn down that night, and that the nuns' remains would be revealed in the ruins. However, the rectory did not burn, and a little less than a year later, it was taken by a new owner. This, however, was short-lived. While the new owner was unpacking books in the library, an oil lamp was overturned. The blaze spread quickly, and before long, only the brick outer walls remained standing. Seeing an opportunity, Price returned and began excavating in the cellar. There, sure enough, he discovered the bones of a young woman. She was given a Christian burial in a neighboring town. The Blue Nun was never seen again, and in 1944, the shell of the Borley Rectory was finally demolished.